Like, really, just when you think there isn't any other shittier thing that you could possibly say to me, seems like you always seem to just know the exact shittiest thing you could possibly say. I'll even say I have puppy fever because fucking babies everywhere and they fucking annoy me. Oh, I thought you was fucking wiggle. Like, fucking great. Thank you. Only been like pretty upset about having broken ovaries, but fuck me, like, obviously. Comment about girls with tattoos and the fucking wonder why the internet runs to the fucking basement apartment downstairs. So the girl's been in Chicago for like fucking however fuck long. They just fucking grabbed my fucking necklace and just fucking took off. Ran into her car and fucking drove away like a fucking pussy. This is fucking stupid. I hate it here. Literally would have just given it to her. I'm assuming that was the styrofoam PTSD. Whoops. Unless it's like also other people who are apparently in the neighborhood, because everybody in this neighborhood apparently does blow because everyone's a selfish piece of shit. Fucking girl at the gas station as I'm fucking leaving. Oh, Santa, down for me. Yeah, I will do that. Of course I will do that. Whoever the fuck you are. Like, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. I was gone. I was north last summer. And this was all because of that. I thought you ran me out of the business. Fucking pull me back into it. Just fuck me over. Why would someone do this? I think this is literally all just revenge because I went up north last summer. On the weekends. It fucking ripped me off and I just started moving somebody else in. And it's just supposed to be a business. I was supposed to have a business, and instead I made somebody else a business. Like a very, very successful one. Yay, now I can start over again. Doesn't even feel bad. Doesn't even feel even slightly bad. Just nothing. Just kept saying some of those customers online. Saying I shouldn't lose my customers. I'm gonna make a deal or some shit. Fucking bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Oh, bullshit. Ruined my reputation in Ganawage. You fucking still work there apparently, so. I was guilty by association. You still working there. How the fuck did that happen? I made that fucking store. 7 days a week. 9 a.m. to like 10 p.m. Even my own brother keeps fucking blowing me off. Sends his friend to come deal with me instead. Why would you fucking at least say that y'all make a place for me at your place? Like, no shit, I didn't fucking take up that offer. Thank God I'm fucking smarter than that. Kinda, maybe, probably not though. Why the fuck would I think that I deserve something, you know? Should just shut the fuck up. Well, I was not too much. You kind of accepted I was gonna be like a fucking miserable working stiff like my father and his father. Because they decided to be honest and do the right thing, and they got fucked. And they accepted 30 years of misery. Because they did the right thing. I'm getting shit on by idiots, like, forever. Basically. Staring at fucking reflection, just fucking seeing her wig goodbye.
It's pretty sweet.
Jesus.
That's right. That's right. The old nice vehicles. Tell me about some of those vehicles you've owned, some of those power muscle cars you've owned.
Well, that's like what I have now. I have a Ferrari 48 Spider, which I think is the most beautiful car in the world, and of any kind, and production car anyway. I have an Alfa Romeo Launch Edition, which was Ferrari. When Alfa was relaunched after 20 years away in North America. I actually drive by because I believe cars should be driven, not just put in an exhibit somewhere. And now I have the Lucid Air.
Okay, so you know the cars you mentioned, the Ferraris, right? And those are cars. They have a feeling. You know, you start that engine and you got something. What made you say, okay, you know what? Let me start looking from the U.S., from a Miami dealership.
Yes. A Miami dealership. Go ahead. Yes, you can. There's a showroom in Toronto and there's one in Vancouver.
Gotcha. Okay, so yeah, take me through the process here because I think you got just a little bit lucky to get this car.
I got very lucky to get this car. First of all, I could not get the Dream Edition. It was long, so Rory 200 ever made. It'll never made again, by the way.
They fucking isolates me from fucking everybody. Come back.
So I got the second edition, which was 800 horsepower, and put my name in line for Dream Edition.
Fuck, for all I know, he could have fucking taken him. Like, I don't give a shit.
Miami dealer, the manager there, and we really hit it off personally. And then a month after that, I got a call from him saying, "Look, a financing just fell through in California. We've got one car available, and it's yours if you want it. I know you want it."
So you said, "I'll take it."
I take it. So then when I phoned them to arrange delivery, etc., they said, "Who are you? What do you do? I like?" Well, this is the first Dream Edition. It's going to be a
You didn't say, as I'll say to our listeners right now, I'm Howard Levitt. You should say that. We're with Howard.
It would not have taken anything with this guy.
We're with Howard Levitt. Yeah, in California, not the same street cred. But Howard, you're in our books. Of course, our listeners. Howard Levitt, employment lawyer, heard on TJ 800. Hosts his own show on News Top 1010 in Toronto. We're talking about his latest ride, the Lucid Air Dream. Okay, so Howard, listen, you know, we brought up that city of Tesla. Was unlucky to financing didn't work out. Right? Isn't this like a double the cost of like a Tesla?
Well, because the model of the Tesla, it was $170 US. I think they're charging. The price has gone up since I bought it.
Yeah.
For all, another 20,000. So it was, I think, $230 here. Now I think it's $250 here.
Oh, buddy.
For the top model. Yeah, no, it's expensive for sure.
So how long have you been driving?
About 4 months.
4 months. And is it a Tesla killer after 4 months?
Oh, absolutely. It's a Tesla killer. You can't imagine what a 111 horsepower feels like unless you've been in one. It's so Canadian ownership papers, so I did not want to be stopped by the police as I drove back 400 or 300 drive. It's a very empty highway, so you couldn't tell from other vehicles. It's not that would feel. It's so seamless. And there's 5 different massages independently for passenger and driver.
Wait, what?
For each massage.
Wait, there's massages now? There are massages?
Yeah, 5 different types of deep massages, shiatsu massage, 5 different types of massage, relaxation massages. So as you drive along, it could really relax you.
Did you have any issues getting it back to Canada? Were there any issues with that?
I didn't as it happened. I guess I got lucky that way.
Gotcha. And over the 4 months, have there been any? Because this is a Lucid, right? The car company. This is a startup, and what generally happens with startup car companies, they have recalls, they have issues. There's got to be fixes. Does that happen so far?
There's one, yes, and of course the Toronto branch fixed it. No problem.
Gotcha.
Their service has been phenomenal. There's a number I can call at any time to answer any question I have. And also, I've been useful to them because it's the only Dream Edition in Toronto or in Canada at one point. Whenever they've had an exhibition of Lucids, once for the Prime Minister, Minister of Energy, or Minister of Environment, I should say, the one who scaled the CN Tower, that guy, the old Greenpeace activist, they borrowed my car to take to the exhibition.
Wow. So Stephen Guilbeault is asking you for your wheels in order to prove the EV
That man's
PowerPoint.
literally a convict. Literally was
asking me
in
to
prison.
show Debo. Yes.
Wow.
And there's a car
weasel.
sale on Dorr Street in Toronto, and they borrowed for that, and that's fine. I'm happy to be part of the family.
Howard, listen, since you were such a car guy and you know your internal combustion engine, now that you've had this Lucid for 4 months, tell our listeners here, are you sold? Is EV the future?
Let's hear it.
Well, look, I'm able to afford both happily, and you get different sensations in both. I still enjoy the Ferrari more, the rev, the rub, the feel, but it's not as fast, even close, as the Lucid is, because it's not 11 horsepower. So am I sold?
Like,
I'm sold for what it is. And unlike my Ferrari, which I'm really loath to put lots of miles on to go up to the cottage and back, the Lucid, no such issue.
Howard, I got to ask you this, as a very famous lawyer in this country. Have you ever had to go to court to defend yourself for a speeding ticket on one of your fast cars?
More often than I could tell you.
What's your record?
Well, I've learned to stick in my lane, which is employment law, and so I've been using, paralegal ex-cops to do that for a living for the last few years. My record was mixed. I usually, of course, they always will reduce the speed, but I would never get the ticket withdrawn. I find the ex-cops are good at getting tickets withdrawn, so it's easier for me to pay.
Howard, listen, thanks so much for coming on and discussing your new ride. It really is one of those sought-after cars in the world.
I'll say one more thing. It's like a spaceship because it's all glass roof. It's all glass in front of you. In fact, the visors, the sun visors, are put in on suction cups because there's nothing else to affix to in the front. It's like riding in a spaceship and you do a little shot ahead. And the adrenaline rush is phenomenal.
What's more futuristic than riding in a spaceship? Howard, thank you so much for coming on this morning. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
That is Howard Levitt, employment lawyer and the first Canadian to own Lucid Air Dream. Elias Magos. When we return, could you be swimming in Lachine next summer? We'll find out.
Yo, people are doing that right now.
Now an update from the CJAD 800.
Why would anybody swim in the St. Lawrence?
Problems anywhere. We do have some
Saw a guy that's literally in the canal. Like, you're gonna come out with a 6th toe.
A little bit of volume right now for the inbound of Mercy. Other South Shore spans are moving well. From the west island, no problems to report. Laval spans are looking fine. Coming back from the Laurentians, even as reverse looking good.
Please don't say you're moving out.
to sleep. And having access to the lighting in the home while you're away, along with timers, will help you feel safe and in control. Call us at 514-439-3901 or visit resav.ca.
Kelly, you've been in there for 2 hours.
Oh, my mette rett nå. My mette rett nå.
Oops. Wait. Not like in the way, am I? Oh my god. Am I in the way? Cool. You guys fucking drive like champs, though. Must be from the wow.
Or is mobile art.
Nope. Like, if you guys are moving stuff, I could move my car across the street. You know what? I don't know where I'm still nice people. I really hope they're not moving out. They're really upset. God, that's so super sucks.
Hey everyone, it's Dr. Romani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel. And I'll guess what we're going to do today. And am I the asshole? That these are just going to work. And if you did not think the world is full of
Well, no, I know. Thank you. Shut up, car.
narcissists, you ought to go on Reddit and read all of these because. And so let's talk about this one today. It's a good one. If you're new to the channel, on narcissism, which believe it or not, this video will be on. Join us, subscribe, join this fantastic community. So let's talk about this one. It's a very interesting one, and as somebody who back in high school worked in these kinds of jobs, I actually found this one quite compelling. So this person is saying, I'm a high school, as a high school student, high school age person, with a weekend job at a coffee shop. My coworkers who work weekends are the owner's son. He goes to my school. He's a shift manager, but it's not a real formal thing, and he's a friendly guy. And then another person who's a college student who sometimes works weekends too. So sometimes customers will come in and just be angry about such little stuff, like literally blow up about nothing. I don't know if they're in a bad mood already and looking for someone to take it out on or what, but it's a lot. Like how sad you have to be a grown-ass man taking your anger out on high school and college kids. That paragraph actually struck me because it's something that I think we're all seeing. Remember how we talked about, there's just sort of the everyday narcissism we run into in the world. I don't know if the person who behaves like this is necessarily narcissistic, but there's something missing in them, right? There has to be a lack of empathy. There's a lot of entitlement. There's a fair amount of grandiosity. There's a lot of arrogance.
You're an asshole, man.
That
God.
sounds like narcissism.
No, like I don't even want the phone.
I mean, you can't go anywhere, grocery store, coffee shop, you name it. So that instability in the world, that's what so now him and the owner's son started joking about having a little fun.
Yeah, because it's bullshit.
And hopefully getting
Yeah, it's all junk bullshit. Like,
customer service interviews, like, how can we punish these people who are so difficult and mean?
fucking hate
one
it
day
here.
I
I
said
hate you, and I
about how we don't
fucking suck shit.
which of course you know that
You feel nothing about it. So what the fuck did I even talk to you about words to you? Because you don't care about anything. No, you really don't though. You don't give a shit about me at all. No, you really don't.
You asked me to include you. I asked you one thing today. Go pick up something.
But I do. I went and picked it up for you, didn't I?
When you came back, you gave me the stink eye about a girl.
The stink eye. I gave you the stink eye.
You did not say.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the girl at the gas station. Some random girl. Who is it? I don't know who it is. Some girl is covered in tattoos. That has a thing. I've never seen her before in my life. But she seems to know you really well.
Oh, really well.
Oh my god, I just hate you so much. Like, why would you fucking literally? I was out. I was literally out of here. And this is all fucking payback. Literally for last summer. Just because I went north for the weekend. Literally, that's why you fucking literally dismantled my life.
Telling me to take off my apron and leave.
I hate you.
Angry guy started to back.
Yeah.
Isn't that big of a problem?
Looks like the fucking lady downstairs is moving out. How convenient for you. You fucking useless. Fuck you. Eat shit, Dom. Eat a mouthful of your bullshit. How about that? All that comes out of your mouth is fucking bullshit, more bullshit.
You have a problem, okay? You don't need to fuss.
Yeah, you really obviously give a shit.
Fire her over it. I didn't mean it. And the owner's son said, no, we pride ourselves on the best customer service. Of course, after all that drama, I still had my job. We were just acting. And we've done it a couple of times. Whenever a customer moves.
I'm gonna say take it again and put it in my face, please. Oh my god, I've never been so really fucking suicidal in my life. Debating whether or not to take the dog with me. Fuck.
Hey everyone,
I'm exaggerating. Cheers.
Dr. Romney, welcome back to this YouTube channel. Guess what we're going to do today? And am I the asshole? That these have just been great. And if you did not think the world is full of narcissists, you ought to go on Reddit and read all of these because, whoo. And so let's talk about this one today. It's a good one. If you're new to this channel, which is on narcissism, which believe it or not, this video will be on, Please do join us, subscribe, join this fantastic community. Well, let's talk about this one. It's a very interesting one, and as somebody who back in high school worked in these kinds of jobs, I actually found this one quite compelling. So this person is saying, I'm a high school, it's a high school student, high school age person, with a weekend job at a coffee shop.
Kill me.
My coworkers who work weekends are the owner's son. He goes to my school. He's a shift manager, but it's not a real formal thing, and he's a friendly guy. And then another person who's a college student who sometimes works weekends too. So sometimes customers will come in and just be angry about such little stuff, like literally blow up about nothing. I don't know if they're in a bad mood already and looking for someone to take it out on or what, but it's a lot. Like how sad.
Welcome to customer service.
So how sad you have to be a grown-ass man taking your anger out on high school and college kids. That paragraph
Especially
actually
with
struck
little
me
old
because
ladies
it's
who work at
something
the
that I
morning
think we're
shift
all
at
seeing
McDonald's because
a
no
lot
one
of.
else wants to work the
There's just
morning
sort of
shift
the
at
everyday
McDonald's. Just
narcissism
imagine
running
yelling
through
at like
the
these
world.
elderly ladies.
I don't know if
like,
the person
yelling
feels
at
like
them.
this is necessarily narcissistic, but there's something missing in them, right? There has to be a lack of empathy. There's a lot of
Motherfucker
entitlement.
shuts right the
There's a
fuck
fair
up
amount
when
of
I'm fucking
grandiosity.
staring him
There's a
down
lot of
though.
arrogance and dysregulation. I mean, that
Turn
too
it this
sounds like
way.
narcissism, but we're seeing it everywhere. I'm sure a lot of you, I mean, you can't go
Fucking
any
yell at
grocery store,
fucking
coffee
little
shop,
old ladies
okay?
who
So
shouldn't fucking
that
be working
instability in the
anyway.
world, that struck me about this one. Okay, so now him and the owner's son started joking about having a little fun with some of these difficult customers and hopefully getting them off of our backs, which anyone who's ever worked in the customer service industry is like, how can we punish these people who are so difficult and mean?
Oh, I
So
give
one day I was at work
the
and some guy
mean
was
bitchy
having a
white
temper
ladies when
tantrum
they'd be like, I
about
know the
how we
difference.
don't
This is
make
not
the
fat milk.
coffee
I don't
hot
think it's not
enough.
fat milk.
Which,
I'd
of
give
course,
them
you
whole
know,
milk.
that dude spilled
It's
the
like, do you
coffee
want to
and
miss your
then
flight?
was screaming hot, but the guy was screaming the coffee wasn't hot enough, which the guy, the letter writer, couldn't do a thing about because I gave it to him right out of the
And
machine.
fucking literally take you like, I can
So
taste the
the
difference.
owner's
I'd
son
say
came
it's
in
much better
and
now.
was like,
And
sir,
you're like,
is
yeah,
there a
all
problem
right,
here?
whatever.
And the guy, the customer who wanted the hot coffee, started ranting at him too. So he was just like, he turns to the guy who wrote the letter and to the, again, the person who wrote this, am I the asshole, and said, this is unacceptable, you're fired. Okay, so the owner's son says, you're fired. The guy who wrote the letter said, I started acting really sad, like, no, please don't fire me. My family needs the money. I need this job, please. And the owner's son played up being a hard ass, telling me to take off my apron and leave. The angry guy started to backtrack, like, it isn't that big of a problem, okay? You don't need to fire her over it. I didn't mean it. And the owner's son said, no, we pride ourselves on the best customer service. Of course, after all that drama, I still had my job. We were just acting. And we've done it a couple of times. Whenever a customer will lose their temper at anyone who works there, the owner's son will storm in and fire us.
I'm sorry, I just do that so whatever
And
was
almost
sexual
every
catch.
time, the person who had come in angry will apologize and say they didn't mean it. It's kind of satisfying, making people realize their actions may actually have consequences. Anyway, I was telling my friends from school about this, and a few of them thought it was a mean prank, because there's no end to enablers, right? That it was a mean prank to let someone go away thinking that they'd gotten someone who desperately needs the money fired. Am I the asshole for this joke? No! I only wish I had thought of this when I was in high school and college, working at a fast food restaurant, and then waiting tables. Really wish I had thought of it. It's actually really brilliantly thought out because it does something interesting, right? And this right here is the mind F that is narcissism. If those customers who came in screaming about the coffee and everything had been straight up psychopaths, they wouldn't care that the person got fired. This is where narcissism really messes with us, right? Because these people only a deeply insecure person is going to come into a coffee shop and yell at high school and college age employees who are working for minimum wage. Only the most insecure, bullying, probably narcissistic people are going to do that, right? Well, they're different than the psychopaths. So when they see that their behavior has consequences, a strange kind of empathy comes up, and it's not real empathy, it's almost like, ooh, I did a bad thing, and they feel shame. And that shame then is like, whoa, they don't need to get fired. They catch themselves. You will see this, for example, with narcissistic people who might be, like, let's say you have a manager who's narcissistic, and they yell at the people who report to them, right? Like the rank and file workers. And they're a total jerk to them. But when they have to deal with the boss above them, they're just like a whimpering sycophant, like, oh, I'll do anything you want. So you can see that transfer, that they'll sort of shape shift and be a bit of a chameleon, depending on how much power they feel they have in a situation. And that dysregulation of the coffee's not hot enough, or that this isn't that enough, that they can't keep that contained and not go off on someone, probably can't do that much about it. Such a signature move of people with narcissistic personalities. I think this was a brilliant move because it was actually a really almost a living experiment. Because frankly, if they did this to someone and they didn't care, they're like, all right, get them fired. I just want some hot
I think
coffee.
people realize how many
That would be to
fucking
me like, ooh,
coffees
that's a little
Starbucks
bit- that's a little
employees
bit
need to
darker.
remake
But
for
the
literally no
narcissistic
reason.
folks, they do not like the idea that not only would they face consequences, they don't like the idea that any of their behavior has consequences. So they really are sort of the preening, pretentious, arrogant fool until somebody says, oh, there's going to
I
be
even
real
paid my
consequences
union
for
dues.
this. So for example, if there was a
Can't even get
workplace
paid it.
event or even a social event and the narcissist did something and then many people are penalized for it, a narcissistic person would be really, really uncomfortable with that. But I think this is actually, it might even need to be part of customer service training because it's a great way. Otherwise, we don't have consequences for these narcissistic folks, do we, right? I regularly go into businesses. In fact, I try not to as much as I can because I just hate how people treat people who work in businesses, who are frontline workers of any kind. It's just awful to watch. But I regularly see them being abused by dysregulated people. And it is, and they really, these folks are completely powerless. And in the era we live in,
Public shame.
with people who have gotten so
Bring
dysregulated,
back
if
public
they have
shaming.
any form of weapon on them, could become quite dangerous. A lot of times these frontline workers actually have to be very, very careful. But the idea that a manager could roll up and say to someone, you've been fired, I wouldn't be
Not.
surprised if that wouldn't work 60 to 70% of the time. Now, I don't know what they do if they have
They told me I'm
repeat
working a
customers.
graveyard
If any
shift.
of
First
those
they closed my
customers came
store
back
and then they
saw
told me
the
I'm working
fired person
graveyard
still
shift.
working there. But if we know one thing
And I said
about
I live in
narcissistic
Shetty
shame,
and I don't have a
I will
car
bet
and you
you
know this.
that
Or a
that person who
license.
threw that hot
There's no
coffee
buses
tantrum
obviously.
won't show up
And
again.
they're like, well,
Because narcissistic
switch
behavior
shifts with
is
somebody, I
very
guess.
shaped
I
by
was like,
shame.
okay, Bianca,
And
switch
remember,
with me.
shame has to be issued in public judgment. That's why
Bianca obviously
shame
did not
often
show up
doesn't
to my
work
shift.
one-on-one. You as an individual won't be able to shame the narcissist. But if they have a sense that there's some sort of public
Took me
reckoning
5
over their
months to get
behavior,
past my
or other
probationary.
people are aware of it,
Thought I got a
they
great
will
deal.
slink
9
away like a little
or
slime
10
monster
hours,
back
4
into the
days.
swamp kind of thing. Like they'll
Nope.
just slide away. They do not like that idea of it being a public judgment and may not literally show up back to
Forever
that
get
place
almost
again.
to my probationary.
So
2
that's
days
something to
before.
keep in mind. So maybe without thinking about it, this person who's definitely not the asshole. In fact, I'd almost say is a little bit of
Called him
genius when it comes to
anyway.
managing
Turned out the union rep
narcissistic
was my
customers.
boss's brother.
I think more than
Shit
a few
talked my boss
companies
to the
might want
union
to
rep.
build this into their
His
customer
brother.
service manuals and really, really sort of see what a narcissist with their sort of tail between their legs, whose bullying actually results in real consequences, how they respond. So I like that
What
one.
times I fucking
Love
paid
to
in
know
the
your thoughts
EI.
on that one. Did you think they were an asshole?
Did
I
you
definitely
go to the Canada
Thanks again.
building? Yeah, I went to the Service Canada building. They said I don't buy for EI. They told me to go to welfare. And welfare tells me no. All because I went back to work. Once again, just trying to do the right thing. Bullshit.
This is and I think like that's why I'd be very loath to use that term with an adolescence. I always say that adolescence is like wearing a sweater that's way too big for them. They're just growing into their personalities. They're trying to figure it all out. Their bodies are changing. The world treats them like an adult for 1 hour, as a child for another hour.
Totally.
So it's just hard to be a teenager. It really, really is. And it's hard to interact with a teenager. So that combination means like we're just trying to put a label on it all. So I say don't even use that word with adolescence, even though the pattern seems to fit. I wouldn't start really sort of saying, this pattern's making me super uncomfortable, probably until their early 20s. Like it's really in place and they haven't kind of grown out of it, whether they've gone to college or military service or like trained in a job or something. Some of that should be correcting at that point. And that's where I would really, really look for.
Shoot the tiny gun. Okay, I feel like this Calgary Stampede thing, I just don't know where the fuck this came from. Apparently everyone knows of it though. Narcissist, blah blah blah. No, no. Fuck. You super sick. Huh?
Today, I would like to talk about passive aggression, which is a silent form of hostility. As easy as it is to call out aggression, it's much harder actually to identify and certainly call out passive aggression. Welcome, everyone. My name is Hannah McDaddick, and I am a performance coach, an emotional intelligence trainer, and facilitator. I help people overcome emotional barriers, self-sabotage, and enhance their emotional intelligence. I have come across a lot of passive aggression in my life. I've acted that way sometimes too. I think the main thing is to become aware when we are being passively aggressive, and also how to handle passive aggression when we come across it. Not everybody's got the guts to actually openly speak about what they don't appreciate and about their preferences. Some people
Then
just don't
why
have
is
the
fucking by
courage
being
to
upset,
do it.
people cannot read
So
your
what they
fucking
will
mind.
do, they will practice the fine art of appearing not angry when
That is the
they're
dumbest
angry
shit I've
actually
ever heard
inside.
though. Like, it's
Passive
so
aggression
stupid.
has very negative consequences in personal and professional life. At work,
Yeah, but don't be
passive
surprised if you
aggression
don't speak
changes
up
the
that
company
nobody's
culture.
fucking
Actually,
like
it's a toxic
piece of
behavior,
shit.
and unfortunately, it breeds very often more passive aggression. It affects the organization's
It really makes me
productivity
crazy hearing
and
people be like,
morale too. So what
what
do
are you
passive
so
aggressive
upset
people
about?
actually do, and why? Well, the passive aggressive behavior sometimes is
By saying
pretty
nothing,
hard
it just
to
means
pin
it's gonna
down.
take
There are
so fucking
certain
long.
common signs, such as refusing to discuss
Obviously, if I'm not
concerns
around, I'm not gonna fucking
openly and
traumatize other people
directly,
just
avoiding
explaining
responsibility,
my
and also being intentionally inefficient. So at work, we may come across someone not meeting the deadline, explaining that they forgot about it, misplacing some documents, not disclosing certain information, sometimes choosing not to take action instead of solve a problem. Of course, some people will gossip, others will embarrass
Who
co-workers
cares?
in meetings
Who
publicly.
cares?
I guess the most popular behavior is actually sulking, avoiding eye contact, avoiding having a conversation, or while having a conversation, sarcasm, sarcastic comments can be very passive aggressive. I'm not saying every sarcasm is a display of passive aggression, but it's a very, very common sign. Using words such as, oh, everything is fine, I'm
I'm literally trying to be
okay,
my own
and
cheerleader right now,
withdrawing,
so.
of course, and promising to change when in reality nothing ever changes. Just saying it to shut the person down. At home, I suppose silent treatment is one of the most common passive aggressive behaviors. Sulking, again, icing someone out, being cold, being withdrawn, and then when asked, denying it all to avoid confrontation, to avoid
Yeah,
the
don't be surprised
resolution
when I
of
do
the
it.
problem.
Like,
I personally struggle with this behavior
ugh,
because it actually
makes me
really
uncomfortable.
disempowers the relationship, and it means that we cannot communicate. So there is nothing then the other person can do. So
No,
why do
just accept that
people act
everybody
in a
feels
passive
uncomfortable
aggressive
and
way?
awkward all
Well,
the
because
time.
they've been harboring anger and they need to get rid of it. So this is a way that they can do it in an innocent, probably according to them, way. If we are being a victim of passive aggression, the person actually gets satisfaction out of us getting frustrated and showing it. It gives them a sense of personal power and being in control of the situation. So our strategies that I'm just going to talk about are going to be focused on not showing our frustration. So yes, how do you communicate with someone who refuses to communicate? Well, the best way is to remain emotionally neutral. So no raised voice, no sarcastic comments, not avoiding eye contact. If the passive aggressive person senses consciously or unconsciously that they've got under your skin,
Borderline
they
isn't like
will
bipolar. It's not
feel
like
more
one emotion is
confident.
the other. It's like
Be
5
mindful of
emotions
your
in the
tone
same
of
fucking
voice.
hour.
I know it's really hard. I tend to be very expressive with my voice, and sometimes my tone even gets misinterpreted as well. It's, I guess, something that can If
I don't
you
know if
are
I could be more
upset,
clear.
I'm not saying that a raised voice or a lot of passion and expression means anger. We don't want to reveal our frustration to a passive aggressor.
No, but now I look like
because
a
they can't
homicidal
handle
maniac.
it. Regardless of what we do, the best way really is to speak to the person face to face. When we experience passive aggression, it's quite often via, for example, texts or emails. It's less likely to happen and it's easier to deal with it as it happens. And if you can speak to the person face to face, do, or alternatively,
Sorry.
on the phone. There are a lot of misunderstandings as well at work like that, which aren't actually intentional, and they can be easily resolved by speaking to someone directly. If someone who's been acting in a passive aggressive way by, for example, delaying things, by procrastinating, if they do something right, so for example, they're normally late with a report that they need to submit every month, but this month they've submitted it on time, it's good to actually genuinely praise them again without sarcasm, without saying, oh, you know, for once you've submitted it on time. No, just saying thank you, it's great, and just talk to them about something else in a nice way. No matter what you do, just don't respond to passive aggression with passive aggression. If there is something that has really, really upset you, just leave it for a moment, but don't leave it too long. Ignoring passive aggression is not going to make it go away. Passive aggression is hardly ever called out. So I hope you found this video helpful.
Not really.
I think we need to pay attention to those less obvious things as well, less obvious behaviors.
I don't think you could call this passive aggressive. I don't know. I think I'm being pretty fucking direct. I think I'm usually pretty fucking on the ball with that one. If I'm upset about something, I'm gonna tell whoever upset me that I'm upset, because why would I not do that? Why would I not do that? Otherwise, how would they know that I'm upset or what I'm upset about? So I get to sit there being upset forever because they're gonna be like, okay, cool, moving on. You said you're not upset, it's all good, let's move on. Yeah. So I'm not too sure what this is. Direct aggressive. Direct aggressive yet emotionally unstable. I don't even know. Jesus Christ. Oh, that's Somebody fucking kill me, please. Like. Hi, Jack. What, booby?
Hey, this is Presh Talwalkar. In this video, I will teach you how to calculate the square root of a perfect square in your head. So when would this skill have ever been useful? Here's the entrance examination for MIT in the year 1876. Question 3 is to extract the square root of 64 over 121 and of 11.56. The square root of the fraction is straightforward. It will be equal to 8 over 11. But how would you calculate the square root of 11.56? Remember, in 1876, students did not have pocket calculators that would give an answer instantly. Instead, they would have learned various algorithms to solve this type of problem. In this video, I will teach you one such method. To get started, you need to memorize the squares of the numbers from 0 to 9. Then focus on the last digit of each of the squares. Notice that some of these squares end in the same last digit. 1 squared and 9 squared both end in 1. 2 squared and 8 squared both end in 4. 3 squared and 7 squared both end in 9. And 4 squared and 6 squared both end in 6. The square of 0 ends in 0. That's different from all the other squares listed here. And the square of 5 ends in a 5, and that's different from all the other squares listed here. So I will illustrate the method with an example. Let's calculate the square root of 1600. First, look at the last digit of 1600. This is 0. So you now want the square whose last digit ends in 0. There's only one option, which is 0 squared is equal to 0. So we put a 0 over here. Then we cross out the hundreds and units digits. We're left with the number 16. We now want to find the square that's closest to 16 without exceeding 16. In this case, 4 squared is equal to 16 exactly. So we will write the digit 4 here. Thus, the answer is equal to 40. Now, this was a simple example. You probably could have calculated it without this method. But this method will show its value in more difficult examples. So let's go ahead with another example. Let's calculate the square root of 4225. The last digit is 5, and that corresponds to the last digit of 5 squared, which is equal to 25. So we write the digit 5 here. We then cross out the last 2 digits. We now want the square that's closest to 42 without going over. So that will be 6 squared, which is equal to 36. So we write a 6 over here. Thus, the square root of 4225 is equal to 65. Now, let's go to a little more complicated example. Let's calculate the square root of 841. The last digit is 1, and that could either correspond to 1 squared, which ends in a 1, or it could correspond to 9 squared, which ends in a 1 as well. So we have 2 options of 1 and 9. We'll sort this out in a little bit. We'll continue by crossing out the last 2 digits. Now we want the square that's closest to 8 without going over. So this will be 2 squared, which is equal to 4. So we write a 2 here. So now we need to go to 2 options. We either have 841 is equal to 21 squared or 29 squared. To distinguish between the two, we'll use a genius method. We will calculate the square of 25, which is in between 21 and 29. So there's a trick to calculating the square of a number that ends in 5. You take the part of the number that's not 5, in this case 2, and you multiply it by 1 more than itself. So we take 2 multiplied by 3, which is equal to 6. Then you append a 25. So 25 squared is equal to 625. Notice 625 is smaller than 841. So 25 squared is too little. So it must actually be the case that 841 is equal to 29 squared. Thus, we take the larger option of 9. So the square root of 841 is equal to 29. This may sound a little complicated, but it'll get easier as we work through more examples. Let's now calculate the square root of 3969. We go to the last digit of 9, and we know that it's either 3 or 7. We then cross out the last two digits, and we look for the square that's closest to 39 without going over. This will be 6 squared, which is equal to 36. So we now need to differentiate between 63 and 67. We will calculate the square of 65, which is right in the middle. So we take 6 and multiply it by 1 more than itself to get 42. Now notice, if we have 4225, that'll be larger than 3969. So 65 squared is too large. So it must instead be equal to 63 squared. So thus we know the square root of 3969 is equal to 63. Wow. Let's now calculate the square root of 1156. From the last digit, we know the options are either 4 or 6. We then cross out the last two digits. We look for the square closest to 11 without going over, which will be 3. We now need to differentiate between 34 and 36. So we take 3 multiplied by 1 more than itself, which is 12. Now 12 is larger than 11, so we need to pick the smaller option of 4. Thus, the square root of 1156 is equal to 34. We can adapt this solution to calculate the square root of 11.56. This will be equal to 3.4. Now let's calculate the square root of 16,384. From the last digit, we know the two options are either 2 or 8. Then we cross out the last two digits. We want the square that's closest to 163 without exceeding 163. This will be 12 squared, which is 144. We now take 12 multiplied by 1 more than itself, which is 156. Then we see that 156 is smaller than 163, so we take the larger option of 8. Thus, the square root of 16,384 is equal to 128. Wow. I will mention that you can also adapt this method to calculate the cube root of a number. You, of course, first have to memorize the cubes of the numbers from 0 to 9. Then the procedure is very similar. In fact, it's even easier because each of the last digits is different. So we look for the cube whose last digit is equal to 4. The only option is 4 cubed, which is equal to 64. So we put down a 4 here. We then cross out the last 3 digits. We look for the cube that's closest to 39 without going over. This will be equal to 3 cubed, which is 27. So we put a 3 here. Thus, the cube root of 39,304 is equal to 34. Amazing. Now, in the present day, we often take arithmetic for granted because we have pocket calculators and powerful computers. But historically, the new calculating methods were revolutionary. Let's go back to the early 1200s in Europe when Roman numerals were the standard practice. Good luck trying to add, multiply, or calculate the square root of Roman numerals in your head. Calculations were instead done on an abacus and translated back and forth to Roman numerals. But with Indian numerals, calculations could be done directly from the numerals. The adoption of the Indian numerals didn't happen right away. There was actually a competition between the two systems, and it took hundreds of years until Indian numerals became the standard. I will close with a quote from the great French mathematician Laplace. It is India that gave us the ingenious method of expressing all numbers by the means of 10 symbols, each symbol receiving a value of position as well as an absolute value. A profound and important idea, which appears so simple to us now that we ignore its true merit. But its very simplicity, the great ease which it has lent to all computations, puts our arithmetic in the first rank of useful inventions. And we shall appreciate the grandeur of this achievement when when we remember that it escaped the genius of Archimedes and Apollonius, two of the greatest minds produced by antiquity. Thanks for making us one of the best communities on YouTube. See you next episode of Mind Your Decisions, where we solve the world's problems one video at a time.
Vsauce! Kevin here with a game that you can always win. Grab a friend and take turns counting using numbers from 1 to 10. The first person to get to 100 wins, which can always be you. To demonstrate, let's have a friendly game between me and, I guess I'll just play with myself. Hey, me, it's good to see me. Am I ready to play? Yes, I am. Okay, add numbers between 1 and 10, and the person who gets to 100 first wins. I'll write the sum in between me's so that you can follow along. I'll start the game. 1, 7, 4, 9, 2, 10, 1. You're just picking numbers randomly like me, right? Yeah. Okay, cool. 3, 8, 8, 3, 5, 6. Seriously, though, we both have 50-50 odds of getting to 100? Sure. All right. 4, 7, 9, 2. Oh, wait, 89. If I play 1, that's 90, and you could play 10 and win. And if I play 10, that's 99, and you could play 1 and win. Oh, weird. I must have gotten lucky. Yeah, right. 5, 6, 100. I win every time. Here's how. You can go now. Me. Oh, fine. Well, I want a rematch, and I guess I'll just see you in the mirror. Yeah. Okay, now let's play a game between me and you, and I'll explain along the way how it works. Okay, the easiest way for me to know I'm going to win every time is for me to go first and start with the number 1. No matter what number you add next, 5, 3, 8, whatever it is, I just subtract your number from 11 to get my next play. So if I start with 1 and if you say 4, then our sum is 5. To get my next number, I do 11 minus 4, which equals 7. So 7 is my next play. 7 plus 5 gives our game a new total of 12. Then you say 8. Cool. 8 plus 12 gives our game a new total of 20. I do 11 minus your 8, which is 3. So I play 3, and our new total is 23. As long as I stick to this strategy, I'm guaranteed to be first to 100. This is why it works. Regardless of your number, mine will always result in a sum that's part of an arithmetic series separated by 11. 1, 12, 23, 34, 45, 56, 67, 78, 89, and then finally 100. Since the highest number you can play in the game is 10, if I separate your moves by 11, I rule the world. Or at least this simple number game. Gotta start somewhere. When you play this game with your friend, can they ever win? Yes, if you mess up the series. While going first, playing 1, and subtracting every opponent's number by 11 is the easiest way to stick with the series. After a few rounds of playing the game, you might want to switch things up to from figuring out your strategy. You could do that by starting with a number other than 1, and then choosing wrong numbers until later in the game when you land on a number in the arithmetic series, like 67 or 78. So if you're playing with your friend and you pick random numbers until the sum is 65, well, then you just need to play a 2 to bring your total to 67, and then you're right on track. From there, just subtract your friend's numbers every single time by 11, and you will be the first to 100. To players who...
The fuck is that guy? He's like the only fucking person who does match tricks I've ever actually watched, and not fucking Penny Teller. That shit's so fucking dumb. Okay. Okay. Sure. Why not?
So in 2010, before I had heard of the term data science, you coined a term that I first learned from Jeroen Janssens, who's right here in the audience. So he was in episode number 531 of the Super Data Science podcast. And he pointed out to me in that episode this awesome data science process that you coined with Chris Wiggins in 2010, before I, or probably most of the people in the audience here, had heard of data science. So what is the awesome OSEMN data science process? And maybe let's just start with that, and then I've got a follow-up question.
Okay, so this is, I mean, as you've already said, it's an abuse of language because I like the word awesome a little bit too much. But so obtain, scrub, explore,
explain,
explain, model, interpret.
Oh, it's explore? It's explore. You're Janssen is fact check.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
I wrote it down.
And what this was, you know, it actually wasn't that long ago, and I'm sure this seems completely obvious to everybody in this room, that you get some data, you clean it up, you look at it, you interpret it, model it, and then you visualize it or communicate it in some way. Like, that's what it was. But in 2010, that was not obvious.
Right.
And we wrote it down because or at least, you know, I kept finding myself in a room where, and this is one of the things I love about the data community, people come from all kinds of different backgrounds to data. Like, some folks come from biostats, and some folks like me come from computer science, and some people come from physics, and, you know, we probably have some economists in the room, and I don't even know where everybody else comes from, but it's probably incredibly awesome. And we end up, you know, trying to solve a problem together, doing the same thing, but using different language or different processes and procedures. And this just kept happening. And so finally we wrote it down and said, we're going to say, this is the process. This is what you do when you are data sciencing. And it is really funny to talk about it here today, because now you look at it and you think, oh, this is so obvious. Like, of course, but it wasn't obvious in 2010.
Yeah, it's super cool how things like that, writing that down 12 years ago, how that has been absorbed by the data science community. And it's helped to provide a backbone for people to understand what they might be doing on a regular basis. And then it makes it into things like Jeroen's book, Data Science at the Command Line. And yeah, it's such a wonderful, open community that I love being a part of. So we know now the 5 stages of the awesome process: obtain, scrub, explore, model, and interpret. That's an N.
The whole thing is an abuse.
And so 12 years later, is there a particular stage of those 5 stages that data scientists struggle with the most still today?
I'm going to say that last one ended up being a stand-in for a lot of things, and that data science work is sometimes work, you know, to make so that you understand something. Sometimes it's work to communicate to somebody else so they understand something, they make better decisions. Sometimes we're building systems that go into production for machines to make decisions or to automate processes. And we just sort of elided all of that, like the what happens next part.
Right.
I think that's become one of the harder things, is doing the first 4 steps without, or with all of those different contexts in mind. So I'm going to say that.
3 million customers without power, no heat, no water after this first storm, and it's been deadly.
Residents are experiencing some of the worst winter weather of their lives.
In 2021, Texas froze over. For a U.S. state known for its heat, the sudden cold snap in the winter of that year was a brutal shock to residents across the region. Power lines froze, plumbing stopped working, and roads were rendered undrivable. 246 people died because they were unable to access the basic means to live. And in the midst of this disaster, when power was shut off across much of Texas, forcing people to suffer through days of intense cold, the private companies managing Texas electric grids were making a killing.
Many Texans are now facing sky-high electricity bills.
Texas is just one harbinger of what's to come. Natural disasters are no longer natural. Not only are they supercharged by climate change, but in the wake of these climate-caused catastrophes, businesses and free market policy hawks exploit those who survive. People in the throes of disasters are unable to push back against new policies and agendas that foreground profit and capitalist accumulation over human well-being. Today, we unpack this by understanding how and why disasters like the Texas freeze are used by capitalism. Today, we ask, what is disaster capitalism and why does it matter? This video was made possible by CuriosityStream and Nebula. If you've been watching OCC for a while, you might know that I have a ton of content that can't be found on YouTube over on the creator-made streaming service Nebula, like my full video on why direct air capture is capitalism's biggest gamble, or a whole video I just made explaining the core principles behind eco-socialism, and much, much more. You can see all of them on Nebula by signing up for the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle at curiositystream.com/OCC or using the link in the description below. Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. This quote, penned by the father of neoliberalism, Milton Friedman, in his book Capitalism and Freedom, is the seed of disaster capitalism. To Friedman, crisis breeds change, but the nature of that change is tied to what ideas are available at the time. It was his life's work to make free market capitalism the idea lying around. From 1962, when that quote was first put to the page, up until today, Friedman and his followers have been remarkably successful in that task. It wasn't until the aftermath of the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003 and the subsequent terror campaign by the US military that destabilized the whole country that this free market disaster agenda emerged into the limelight. After witnessing the atrocities of Iraq, journalist Naomi Klein set out to understand how and why policies of capitalism rooted in privatization, deregulation, and the free market, also known as neoliberalism, directly after disasters. She sums up her finding in the 2007 book, The Shock Doctrine, and reveals the plans of right-wing governments and free market hawks.
After a shocking event, a war, coup, terrorist attack, market crash, or natural disaster, they exploit the public's disorientation, suspend democracy, push through radical free market policies that enrich the 1% at the expense of the poor and middle class.
In short, capitalists harness the shock of disasters, whether natural or unnatural, to ram through policies of privatization, buy up property cheaply, and exploit shattered communities for profit. And as we will soon see, disaster capitalists have been hard at work enacting this change since the 1960s. On September 11th, 1973, a battle raged in the streets surrounding the Chilean Capitol building. A group of military officers led by General Augusto Pinochet and backed by the economic and political might of the United States ousted the democratically elected and immensely popular socialist leader of Chile, Salvador Allende. In place of Allende's policies, which included free milk for children, land redistribution, and the nationalization of industries like healthcare, the U.S.-backed Pinochet regime stepped in and instigated military rule. They rounded up thousands of suspected leftists and tortured, killed, or disappeared them. Later reports by the National Commission on Political Imprisonment and Torture, as well as the National Commission for Truth and Reconciliation, found that Pinochet's regime committed over 30,000 human rights abuses. In the midst of this terrible violence heaped onto the Chilean public by the new military government, Milton Friedman's protégés in Chile, known as the Chicago Boys, began whispering policy recommendations and neoliberal ideas into Pinochet's ear. Policies that had been drummed up in cooperation with the CIA months before the coup took place that foregrounded free market ideas of privatization and deregulation. By 1975, Pinochet had unleashed these neoliberal policies upon Chile. His regime sought to turn back much of the nationalization accomplished by Allende. They reprivatized agricultural land distributed under Allende, as well as sold off industries like state-held mines to Pinochet's son-in-law for low prices. All told, Pinochet's government sold off an estimated $3.6 billion US dollars worth of state-owned assets.
Right. Yeah, fucked up. Anyway, paid $2 for that. $2. Sure. That's what the fucking fucking freak out.
Yeah, I got multiple notifications on LinkedIn that people working in the Prime Minister's office were looking at my profile. More than once I got these notifications, and the first time I was like, okay, what does that mean? And the second time and the third time, and it was clear to me that I had said things that were not so good for their public relations team.
I'm Dave Rubin, and joining me today is the Substack essayist for Noble Truths with Rav Aurora and journalist, who I don't put air quotes around. It's quite lovely. Rav Aurora, welcome back to the Rubin Report.
Hey, Dave. It's good to be on, and it's good to get that formal Noble Truths with Rav Aurora introduction. I'm still working on that branding, but I like the way you said it for sure. Appreciate it.
Noble Truths with Rav Aurora. It sounds pleasant and lofty, and really the highest compliment that I can give someone these days. The fact that I can call you a journalist and I didn't have to do air quotes. I mean, does it get any better than that?
Yeah, and I don't have any formal education, so for some people that evokes a lot of skepticism about who this weirdo writing in his mom's basement is. But I think for a lot of people, it's just I just kind of just say what I want to say, and I'm just straight with the facts, and I don't try to spin it according to any kind of preconditioned narrative. I'm not working for anybody. I'm just writing about issues that are important to me, and I don't really identify as liberal or conservative. Just kind of trying to make sense of the world, whatever comes my way, and if that means I'm going to sound a little left on something or a little right, I just go for it.
Well, Rav, I would rather have a weirdo in his mom's basement than someone that went to Columbia Journalism School, so you are good to go. Most of my audience probably recognizes you. You've been on the show for multiple Friday panel extravaganzas, but you do fine work as a journalist. You are up in Canada, and the reason I wanted to do this condensed interview with you today, and we're just sort of shooting this on the fly, is because you've gotten into some hot water with your prime minister up there in Canada, Justin Trudeau, who, in my estimation, is the most authoritarian, I would say, world leader from a Western nation. And you've been writing a bit about him and what's going on in Canada, and now the government is looking into you. you scary person in your mom's basement?
Yeah. I don't know why I'm so threatening. I mean, I don't know. My mom has been funny about this, and I can talk about that in a second. But I wrote an op-ed in the New York Post calling Trudeau basically a horrible authoritarian leader who's violated basic human rights, civil liberties, and constitutional rights, specifically with respect to the vaccine mandates. And I just talked about how my family were immigrants from India, and we came to Canada in search for more freedom, whether that's financial, social, political, vocational. We just wanted more opportunities, and that was kind of the idea that my mom and my dad had is to give us more freedoms, right? Give their kids more freedom so they can pursue what they want to pursue. And here we are during the COVID pandemic, and yes, there are many issues surrounding keeping people safe, keeping vulnerable people safe, and there are various restrictions that perhaps make sense. But when it came to just my freedom, it was completely restricted. I couldn't go to the gym for the longest time for several months. Couldn't go out to a restaurant and dine in, and I couldn't even travel by air. I couldn't even fly or go on a train anywhere in the country, let alone leave the country for several months due to the travel vaccine mandates that outright banned the unvaccinated from traveling anywhere other than if you want to go in your car. But even that, you couldn't cross the U.S.-Canada border, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities. Like in December, for example, I was talking to Ben Shapiro's team. I've been on the show a couple times, and we were thinking about doing something in Florida actually at the time in person, and I just couldn't go because I was banned. I was deemed as a second-class citizen who was not able to travel.
Come on.
And so in this article that I wrote, I just made that point of, in many ways, my freedoms would have been more secured in India, the country that I came from, than here, even though we came here for more freedoms. And that to me is just a total travesty, and really makes us reevaluate what the supposedly free liberal democracy here in Canada, where our freedoms are completely restricted.
So you write the piece in the New York Post, and of course, nothing you're saying is coming as a surprise to my audience, because obviously we've covered a lot of what's going on with Trudeau in Canada, the trucker convoy, and freezing bank accounts, and all of that stuff. So I think everyone watching this is on board. They hear what you're saying. But then how did this thing level up? You suddenly found some government people were doing a little digging on you.
Yeah. I got multiple notifications on LinkedIn that people were that people working in the Prime Minister's office were looking at my profile. More than once I got these notifications, and the first time I was like, okay, what does that mean? And the second time and the third time, and it was clear to me that I had said some things that were not so good for their public relations team, and I don't know who it was that looked at me, whether it was just some 27-year-old intern at the public relations office, or whether it was somebody higher up. A lot of people think it's somebody perhaps higher up who, for them, like, this is really bad press, right? And that's obviously not my goal. My goal is not to just shit on Trudeau. My goal is to just say what I honestly want to say and talk about some of the disturbing authoritarian trends in this country. And it seemed to have rung an alarm for them, and they wanted to look into me, and I don't know what the implications of it is, other than I'm on the Prime Minister's radar, and I should probably put that on my Twitter bio.
It should be on your Twitter bio for as long as you're allowed to be on Twitter. I know a little something about how tenuous that can be. But can you just talk, like, joking aside for a second, can you just talk about the chilling effect of that? I mean, look, you're outspoken publicly. You're a young person trying to make your bones, make your career. You are publicly unvaxxed, so you could not leave the country. You're critical of the government, and now you have government agents, in essence, looking closely at your work. I mean, you're in your mom's basement, as you said. It's not the most fun thing in the world.
Yeah. No, some people have mentioned to me that I should take this a bit more seriously than I am, and I think that's just my personality. Is like I don't take these things super seriously and lose sleep over them. I mean, if Trudeau's losing sleep over me, that's fine enough. I don't want to lose sleep over making Trudeau lose sleep, But no,
I'm
no.
glad we have
In
people
all
like
seriousness,
you
it
who
is.
get to speak for
It is very
everyone.
chilling that one article can have that kind of effect, especially given that
Everyone
I don't
thinks
really
we're a
have
bunch of fucking
like a
idiots.
massive platform yet. I'm still growing. I'm still a young person, and
No,
I mean, even just on Twitter too, with that article that I posted, there were
you are a grown-ass
so many
adult
journalists,
man.
government-funded journalists, by the way, working for the CBC, working for Global News, the Toronto Star, that were pointing out that this op-ed is total balderdash, and he just get vaccinated, and he's just whining about his freedoms, and a lot of people, by the way, weirdly enough, were saying, "Oh, he should just go back to India. Why is he?"
With all of that. That was terrible. You're welcome. Bye. You guys are the most adorable child. She's the most polite, well-mannered child I've ever heard. She's so cute. I'm not. I'm really not. I have fucking raging hormones right now, so I just have like fucking too much estrogen, and I need to go beat the shit out of something. She really likes my chalk too. I literally chalk sometimes for her. Like I have made hopscotches that
We
are
all
like
know
super
that our
hard
corporate
work.
and government overlords have the most perfect plans when it comes to the food shortages, but also to make sure that we have access to only the most nutritional food available to us. But just this past Monday, a Reuters article titled "Dutch Farmers Protest by Blocking Supermarket Distribution Centers" highlighted the facts that these farmers won't trust our amazing overlords and the perfect plans in place. And that's not all. There are numerous countries worldwide that are going on protests about the food shortages. But let me tell you how all of this is part of a wonderful master plan by His Royal Highness Klaus Schwab. In fact, the plan outlines how we need to surrender more power to our corporate and government overlords to figure out what we're going to eat and how we're going to eat it. And we don't need to apply any critical thinking because our amazing and infallible leaders are already taking initiatives to take control over the food production so that we don't have to. Take example, one of our overlords, Bill Gates, is actively buying thousands of acres of farmland so that he can make all the decisions on how food is produced. Bill Gates is now considered the largest private owner of farmland here in the United States, with over 269,000 acres of farmland in his tender care. Just for context, the U.S. Department of Agriculture estimates that there are approximately 850 million acres of farmland last year. So that means Bill has 849,731,000 acres to go. In fact, he might just be saving us from all the food plants that are being burned down by magic. And of course, the food plants weren't burned down by some malicious people looking to cause artificial food shortages. What a silly idea. So clearly, we need to trust Bill Gates and his plan, as somehow all these food plants are mysteriously burning themselves down. And when asked why our overlord Bill Gates is buying up farmland, so passionate in making sure that we eat the type of food that our overlords want us to eat. For example, Bill wants some of the more affluent countries to stop eating meat and rather switch to 100% synthetic meat, which he is clearly obedient to one of the top 6 Great Reset goals by 2030, where all of us will eat less meat and eat more fake meat. And everything fake is just better for you.
Aspartame side effects, there they are.
So overlord Bill Gates is setting an amazing example for us to follow. Another way that our corporate overlords are taking care of us by seizing all food production is through the Rockefeller Foundation's 2030 goal to completely transform the American food system. And their pure and perfect goal for the U.S. food system is to promote social justice, environmental protection, and fairness. Wow, it already sounds amazing. And at the same time, the Rockefeller Foundation wants all of us to eat more insects as a source of protein instead of meat. In fact, the collection of our true masters, the World Economic Forum, published an article about this, saying by 2050, the world's food supply would need to feed another 2 billion people. Insect farming for food and animal feed could offer an environmentally friendly solution to the impending food crisis. Ah, yes, I can begin to smell the flavoring and savory smell of barbecue insect. And I know what you're thinking. No, I don't already eat deep fried cricket just because I'm Asian. And unfortunately, there are people all around the world that is choosing to disobey our corporate and government overlords of their perfect plan for our food. We're seeing rebellious behaviors in places like Ecuador where people are protesting their food shortage. So the Ecuadorian government declared a state of emergency to take away the citizens' freedom to assemble. That would teach them. And across the ocean in Sri Lanka, the Sri Lankan government chose to obey the Great Reset Edict by using less fertilizer that the rebels are claiming it led to a food shortage. And coming back to those rebellious Dutch farmers, they are protesting for the same reason that the Dutch government is wanting to use less fertilizer and livestock to protect the environment. Clearly, those Dutch farmers don't know anything about our infallible and the most perfect plan by His Excellency Klaus Schwab. And don't they know that we're trying to eat more fake meat and crickets? I mean, where do these people think we get our food from? Farms? And back in the United States, our totally legitimate and alert president who never falls off bikes, Joe Biden, announces new measures to reduce fertilizers and expand the U.S. crop production using the power of Biden's mind. Wow. So clearly, the United States won't have any food shortage problems at any time because clearly our amazing and perfect president has a plan. And you know what? The plans to reduce fertilizer use and to eat less meat is all part of our amazing plan, according to the Great Reset Edict. In fact, if you want to politely remind everyone and not forcefully convince them to eat less meat, the World Economic Forum has an amazing article that talks about how you can convince others to eat less meat. And when it comes to fertilizers, the World Economic Forum wants all the farms to model what China did to use less fertilizers. Well, because China really cares about the environment. So as you can see, you can totally trust our amazing corporate and government overlords when it comes to our food. And because we aren't capable of critical thinking and choosing for ourselves, we need our government and corporate overlords to choose what's best for our food. But here's the ultimate reason why you need to surrender your rights to choose your food to our corporate overlords. It's more than just about our food. And let me use a notable example of a country that is the prime example of excellence, and that is Cuba. Cuba's perfect governing system obviously has a full control over the food supply and production in the country. But there are people who are ungrateful of such generosity of the Cuban government. In fact, the totally unbiased Cuban media source says that the government of Cuba was able to crush the rebels and the ungrateful protesters by peacefully blockading them in their own homes, preventing them from marching against the most benevolent government of Cuba, who definitely doesn't use violence to keep people obeyed. But there are rebels in Cuba who dare to question the media's truthful reporting, saying that the protests stopped because the Cuban government artificially adjusted the price of food to be lower so that these rebels think twice about protesting. Quoting from an article by Foreign Policy, it reads, Yosmani, a Cuban citizen, believes lowering prices was a government ploy to butter up Central Habana's residents so that they would not protest. If residents can't afford food, they'll be content. But you know what? Sometimes you just need to keep people hungry and feed them the right time to stay obedient. Anything to get the rebels to stop protesting. Like keeping the rebels just barely starving so that they don't have any energy to fight back. Great job, Cuba. And to implement the perfect examples from places like Cuba and North Korea, we need to trust our corporate and government overlords and surrender our need for independent food production. And we can definitely trust them to not take it up. Because, well, I have full confidence that all of us here would just obey, and there's no need for our overlords to use our own food supply to crush any rebellious thinking. As long as you're in full obedience of our corporate and government overlords, you will be fed with fake meat and crickets.
No.
This is also extremely terrible precedent for Pat King. This is the judges, by the way, someone pointed it out before, they're not elected. They're political appointees. I don't know who this judge is. And I don't know who appointed him. There's no other word. It's just disgusting.
Yeah, I agree.
No, just hear some judges. We'll go off record, and they're going to go back to the other stuff that they had on the docket. Can you imagine how good Moise Karimji feels right now?
Who?
Can you imagine how despicably good he must feel about himself right now? Willing executioners. Thanking everybody. She's gone back to jail. The hearing will be next week, July 14th.
No, she's a dangerous criminal, obviously.
Now the judge makes a joke.
Yeah,
with
I
the
love
clerk, I
that.
guess.
I love how they.
How was
joke
that? I
about
got done in
shit.
time.
So bullshit.
Yep. Let's yuck it up while we haul an innocent woman to jail. Yeah, it's done. Okay. No one is safe in Canada. If anyone thinks that's being hyperbolic, no one is safe in Canada. And some, and I'll say trolls in the crowd, in the chat, lock her up.
Really? That sucks.
You think anyone is safe in Canada when it was a peaceful and it was not an unlawful protest? And that's not me talking. That was the judge who issued the first injunctive order in that civil suit. Said what you cannot do, and to the extent that you abide by this court order, you can continue to peacefully and lawfully protest. There was no order of the court, no piece of legislation that determined that protest was unlawful. No one was smashing windows. They were shoveling snow. No one was burning cars or assaulting sidewalks. No one was setting fires. Let me rephrase. There were campfires. There were bouncy castles, hot tubs. The city was not gridlocked. The city was not gridlocked. And any court that takes judicial notice of the fear of the citizens and the gridlock of the city, you've taken judicial notice of fake information. Maybe some people were scared. I'll say that anyone who says they were scared, who lived in fear, is lying, or probably is scared of their shadow. The gridlock of the city, I drove there to document the nonviolence, to interview the citizens. To interview the citizens who confirmed that they were not scared, and other than some noise for the first few days, maybe the first week, it was not that bad. I drove there, never gridlocked. I was in and out. I parked on Eglinton every day. I didn't hit a lick of traffic. I parked on Eglinton, right across the street from the subway. Not the subway, the metro, but the subway, the sandwich place. And I walked the 3 blocks to the protest. And you couldn't even hear the horns honking when I went there the first few days when they were honking horns until you got within a couple of blocks. This is the biggest load of crap I've ever seen in my life. This is why I can't practice law actively. This is why I can't stomach law. I can't live with this type of injustice. I can't stomach this type of injustice. I can't stomach the fact that this is a cut and dry, obvious case. And not only did it not go the way it should have gone, it went the exact way it should not have gone. Evil has been rewarded because I truly believe Moise Karimji has evil intentions. Justin Trudeau sitting there, rubbing his hands, must be happier than a pig in filth.
Is it different?
No politician or man shall tell any woman what she can and cannot do with her body. Straight to jail, Tamara. This is.
Yeah, but like once dumpster babies start popping up again.
In my life, I'm just trying to think. In my life in Canada,
hangers in their poop.
Have I seen more of an injustice than this entire? Than this entire.
Apparently, we all remember. Oh yeah, that's why people get abortions, not because
I can't think of any. I cannot think of a bigger injustice. Not just to an individual people, because this is not Tamara. People have been wrongly imprisoned many times for many reasons. Usually it involves some form of malicious prosecution, underlying biases, or whatever. This is victimizing Tamara, the judicial system, and the nation of Canada. Canada, and I'm not saying Canadians, and I'm not saying peace-loving Canadians, and I'm not saying the entity, the governmental entity that is Canada, is an absolute disgrace, should be mocked thoroughly by everyone in this world. I've got to tell you, North Korea, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin should be looking at Canada right now and saying, "Doctor, heal thyself before you ever dare criticize Putin for locking up journalists. Criticize North Korea for sentencing a thief, an alleged thief, to 13 years hard labor after a 1-hour trial." This is a warning for all Canadians not to speak up against the Trudeau government. Understand, people, what is happening. I don't know if I'm causing too much echo. Tamara Lich is going back to jail because she went to an award ceremony that a previous judge authorized her to go to. Took a picture with Tom Marazzo, someone who she was not supposed to communicate directly or indirectly with in the absence of counsel, at a gala organized by her counsel.
Welcome to the club,
She
bro.
whispered in his ear something to which we don't know what it was.
I know.
In a 3-second video, she flaunted her freedom to the world, such that the terrorized innocent civilians of Ottawa who were victimized by this. And by the way, the judge is probably just talking about himself. I felt scared. Scared. It has to have a W in it. Like
Sir.
A 3-year-old kid. I felt scared. The cars were honking.
Yeah, isn't that concerning? That's like
it was an egregious act of disrespect. Flaunting her freedom, pulling down the pants and defecating on the judicial system that warrants.
Totally.
It's going to be 11 days now. It'll be 2 more weeks, 1 month plus, detaining a Métis woman, mother, grandmother,
Oh, so we did
over
find out
mischief
that she
charges
wasn't lying
and
about
alleged
her
breaches
status.
that are so de minimis. But for this, no one would have known that they occurred. They're worse than breaking my brain. They broke my spirit. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. This is inconceivable. Not a police state. This is not what was supposed to happen in a free country. This should be Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, the only people who are going to care. Can you imagine if they were to have locked up any other type of protester for this extended period of time? There was an injunction once upon a time prohibiting indigenous protests on the railways. The injunction was violated. The police were not enforcing it. Nobody went to jail because that's cool to protest. It's cool to protest indigenous rights. That's why ultra woke Justin Trudeau included it as an exception to the protests that would be authorized, notwithstanding the invocation of the Emergencies Act. It's cool to protest for Indigenous rights. Protest for your own constitutional rights, even if you're Métis, half Indigenous, half European. Not so cool.
Yeah, but like
The
why
Indigenous
would
protests
she lie
where they
about
were,
her native
they
her-
were,
her Indian status and then
what's
be
the word I'm looking
super
for?
public.
Blockading railways across Canada.
That would be
I don't think anybody went to jail for that.
stupid.
Canada is not a free country. Canada is a banana republic with kangaroo courts being governed by